a Dear Media original podcast.
So here we are after watching the first episode of Laguna Beach, the Real Orange County.
Wow. I have so many thoughts, so many questions, so many things to say.
We've exchanged some text messages.
Yeah.
You sent me a wow with a couple other things. And I sent over, I think, a whoa with a couple other things. And then we were like, let's save it for the pod. But
let's save it.
Holy shit. We've got a lot of ground to cover.
Wow, we really do. I'm not gonna lie. Right before I started watching it, my heart was racing. I had some major nerves.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
But
Serious
then,
nerves.
same. But then as soon as that intro music started playing, it just totally transported me back to that moment in time, and I was just like, "Holy shit!" It was really wild. You know what I thought?
So wait, was that like soothing in a way? Almost like
no.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like the music started and you felt better. I was like,
oh
seriously?
no, what have I done?
I was like, because I actually have this note about how MTV, the opening, like the way that they first started it was so innocent, where it was almost like, oh, this is going to be a casual show about these people. Look at them have fun, and it doesn't go that way at all. So I was like, it was one thing I wrote down. We'll get into that, but
yeah,
we have I think a lot to unpack here, and we are obviously here doing the first episode of Laguna Beach, the pilot episode, which was called A Black and White Affair.
Yes, it was.
Which the double entendre went right over my head back in 2004. I'm like, what? No idea what was going on there. And the episode aired on September 28th, 2004. Kristin, what were you doing September 28th, 2004?
Probably locked myself in the bathroom. Remember all that? Yeah.
At least you weren't in college meeting all new people.
That's true. Yeah. But I was a lone ranger while Talon and I still left in high school.
Yeah,
but
you guys had to deal with everything coming down all at once, and the kids at school probably looking. I knew you talked about this a little bit in the Welcome to the Pod, but people were looking at you in a different way, right?
The freshmen were, and that was interesting.
What describe this to me?
Well, they just looked at me differently. Like which I don't know.
Were they trying to take pictures of you?
No one ever, I don't remember anyone ever trying to take a picture of me, but I just remember them like looking, like giving me a second look. And I was like, what is going on here?
Is that chick from TV? What's she doing at my school?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't like this, but,
yeah, I had phone. There were cameras because this was obviously way before iPhones and whatnot. So there was either a disposable camera or some sort of a digital camera. You just see an arm extended into the hallway in my dorm, and then a picture going off as I was walking down. I'm like, how did you even know I was leaving my room?
Right, I know. It's
bizarre.
Wild. And truly, I do feel like it happened overnight. The first episode aired, and then our lives truly did change.
Yep,
they did. I will say this episode, wow, what a first episode. I feel like they really knew the boxes that they wanted to put us in. And it's apparent in that first intro, and Lauren narrates the first season. And, to her credit, she wasn't coming up with these lines.
Of course.
I know the second season I narrated, and you go into a recording studio and they literally hand you a script. And I do remember times going, well, I wouldn't normally say this. They're like, well, just try it. And you're like, all right. And of course, that's what they use.
That's what they use.
Yeah. And so, I'm not blaming Lauren at all, but it's just interesting when she first introduced us. She says things like, there's Christina, the Reverend's daughter. Check that box. There's Trae. He's the serious one. Talon hooked up with everybody twice. It's like, oh, okay, no, I get the characters that we're supposed to be. It's very clear to me in this little intro.
And they put it through Lauren's POV to make it even more, real, quote unquote, for the audience, which, let's back up a little bit. They had that little spiel at the beginning. Remember that? So first of all,
did I miss that watching the episode?
I don't know if it was on there.
I don't
Actually,
think
it wasn't on. It wasn't on mine
That's
as well.
That's amazing that you remember that. It says everybody was real. This isn't acting, right? It was like a whole spiel about how real it was.
Red flag of like, this is super real, guys.
Also, aren't you guilty if you have to say that? Just saying.
Do you remember that we did a commercial? Like one of the things we did a commercial for the show, and everyone was like, it was like, I don't know. I just remember our bit where we kissed, and then I had to say to camera, this is not acting.
Yes.
Like emphasis on the not.
Yes.
And that was a commercial they used. And so that was a big thing, of course, for MTV was like, remember, tell everybody this is real.
I'm like, okay,
this is exactly...
the show is completely fake. They did not like me for that.
Yeah. So but they really set the table of this is real life. And they did a really good job of doing that. They put everything through Lauren's POV. I remember right when the show opens, very innocent, like, I'm Lauren, like, I'm hanging out in this beautiful
nice
town.
girl.
Yeah, and like, it's so casual, and look how it's fun here. And then they start to paint the picture for everybody.
Yes.
And they, like you said, they put everyone in a certain box, and these are the characteristics that they're going to highlight throughout the show. whenever they have the opportunity to. And of course, they did this after they knew everything that they had and what they got. And then they were going back and editing everything as they were polishing those final episodes to get ready to go. And another note we should say is that this episode is, I mean, the whole show is like this, but it's a mashup of completely different time periods.
Yeah.
Where they needed to come back and piece some things together. There's certain things that happened months before and then months later, especially where our relationship was in that time because we were off and on.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, when we filmed the pilot, which was months prior to us shooting the series, we were in a very different place in our relationship. And I think, 2 months in a high schooler's life can make a world of difference. And so there are scenes in this episode, which we'll get into, where I'm very emotional, I would say, about us and you and Lauren. And then there's other scenes where we look actually like we're doing great, And now watching it, to me, it makes perfect sense because they were filmed so out of order and then mashed together as though they were within a few days of each other, which just wasn't the case.
The biggest thing that I pulled from watching this episode was the anxiety I got of watching it the first time and then painting this picture of me just willy-nilly going around trying to be a player, trying to just openly playing these two girls. But look, it's we'll get into this. Obviously, they have stuff that they were going off of and trying to recreate a situation and understanding what's going on in people's backgrounds. But to have, paint me as a liar here and then as just
you are a bad liar. There's one scene I was like, oh, Stephen, come on, you're a bad liar.
Are we going to dinner?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was like, wow. And the fact that I sat there and although I did call you out,
it was edited.
No, that wasn't edited.
I think you were. We'll have to get there. Into it. But I think what they were using, all the pieces they were putting together, I was like, and I think that we were because this happened a lot. We were talking about different parts of a story and maybe you were calling me out on what time I was going somewhere.
I love that.
But there was something else that maybe we were talking about I was over here, I was at this person's house and I went here. Yeah. And then they're like, you know what, they could piece that all together and make it sound like we're just singularly talking about being at Lauren's house or whatever. But because that was never
definitely.
I think you can back me up on this. I was never we were never in a relationship and I was over hooking up with Lauren where it was cheating on you or anything like that. That wasn't happening. So it was I remember being that was, as somebody who through our relationship, we had this big relationship, at least to us at that time in our lives was the biggest thing. And that was, crumbling around us. And it put us all in a very vulnerable position and things are happening for the first time in your life that you've never dealt with before. And I just remember being so lost and not wanting to have any drama. The irony of it all, not trying to create anything. And the times that they were oh, well, talk about what you like about your friend Lauren and what you like about Kristin, and then them telling Polster and Trae, oh, you should ask Stephen, what it would be like if the girls were fighting over you and stuff. When those guys came in, the producers came in and asked them to do stuff like that. And that's what they wound up using was,
of course.
I don't know. It just, again, we'll go scene by scene here as we're going to do with every episode. And already you can tell we got a lot to cover because this is what we expected with this podcast. We're going to go through watching every episode for the first time in 18 freaking years.
Yeah.
And to go back and have the memories come back. And I don't know. We'll see. But look, to continue on, I think, they set the tone there, as you mentioned, through Lauren's perspective and everyone's characters. And then they go into these kind of what Laguna was known for, these beautiful pictures of the coastline, the sweeping shots. They got the helicopter, flying down the coast and getting all that stuff with Come Clean by Hilary Duff, which...
ingrained in my mind.
Yeah, whenever you hear that song.
I will say, I think part of the allure of the show was how beautiful it looked, and it was shot like a movie. And I remember at the time, that was a very new thing, and that was really appealing to a lot of people. And I think that was also largely in part why it was such a big question of, is this real or not? Because it was shot like a movie. And we didn't have, are they called confessionals? Or, those interviews.
You talk right to camera?
Right.
Yeah.
So we had to establish the whole story in scene. And I remember them talking about that a lot, just being well, we have to cover all of the ground because we don't have those interviews to piece it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I mean, shout out Sham, by the way, our DP cinematographer who got a lot of that stuff.
He should have won an Emmy, honestly.
I don't know if they even had Emmys for reality shows back then.
They do now. They probably didn't at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember when I saw the first episode, I was so upset and I called you crying and I locked myself in the bathroom and I think you came over and you were trying to console me. But I was very confused about, well, did that really happen? tell me the truth. I was
Yeah.
also really upset about how they portrayed me.
Yeah.
And I think it was really hard for me because in my mind at the time, you and I felt like we're in a good place. And then they had you hanging out with Lauren and, to your point, made it
Were
seem
we
like,
in a good place?
I don't know.
We were
Shit,
always
I
up and
thought.
down. I think we were always, the last year there, I think we were both
It was
on
a little
different
up and
pages
down,
there.
I'll give you that. But regardless, it felt as though, and you just admitted it. It looked like you were playing both of us big time.
I know.
And that was really hard for me.
Yeah, and we'll go scene by scene and break down what was
yes, we will.
MTV's.
I have some questions.
We'll do a little bit. MTV or IRL?
I love that.
MTV or in real life?
Okay. All right. Well, should we just jump right in here?
Yeah, let's go. So opening, let's talk about you and your red bikini that they
I would love to talk about this because
How
this
many times did
actually,
they use that shot in the first 5 minutes?
I can't. So I shot this. I think this was a pickup scene. So pickup scenes, you film an entire season. And then at the end, as they're laying out episodes, they realize
once they know what they want the story to be,
the
how it's going to play
storyline.
out. Yeah.
They realize they're missing some scenes to connect the dots. Anyways, so then you go back and you film pickup scenes. So you sometimes have to pretend as though prom just happened, even though it happened 7 months ago. Anyways, this was a pickup scene. I have no idea what house I'm at. This was a house that was rented on the beach. I'm laying in the pool. A producer was putting this god-awful purple red lipstick on me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I had nothing. I always
Someone
wore
handed you
nude
lipstick and
lip.
was like,
no,
wear
she
this.
literally put it on me. Put it on me. And so my first scene is me laying in this pool, coming out of a pool and getting on a fake phone call because I'm pretty sure every phone call we did was fake. There was no one on the other end of the line.
With your little flip phone?
But yeah, they very much tried to paint this picture of who I was and they nailed it. I mean, they put me in a box and that's who I was throughout the entire
So you feel like they nailed it as far as who you were?
No, I don't feel like they nailed who I was. I think when I was younger, I very much had walls put up and I didn't know how to be vulnerable. That's something I've had to learn in my adult life. So when I felt threatened by our relationship or somebody else, I just knew how to be an asshole, quite honestly. And I did have a strong personality. And I think, you can very easily label that as being a bitch. I stood up for myself. I wasn't just
You had to bounce around before
pushover.
you showed up at Laguna, right?
I did. So I'm not from Laguna Beach. I was born in Colorado. I lived in Connecticut, a suburb of Chicago. So I was kind of all over. I was always the new girl. So I was always forced into these situations and I had to just kind of be a survivor. So I knew how to survive and that's what I was doing when I was forced into these situations. And it didn't always come off in the best light. I take full responsibility for some of the dumb, nasty catty girl stuff that I said. But I do feel like, I think the difference was you and I talked about, we know what MTV is trying to do. Like, I do remember a specific conversation, and it was a scene from this episode where you went up to Lauren's house that was being built to go, check it out and see it. And I remember saying to you, you know what they're trying to do. So why are you going to go up there? I remember that conversation. And I think the difference was you knew what they were doing. We were trying to be team players. I think at the time when you're 17, 18 and you have producers telling you to do something, you don't actually know that you can say no. I think now it's a very different story.
Yeah.
But what I felt at the time was that Lauren didn't understand the difference. Like, I do still think she liked you a lot. And I think that she felt like there was something there still. And maybe there was. I don't know. But that was tough for me to have my boyfriend going and hanging out with someone else that he had a history with.
Yeah. Well, you have quotes boyfriend. It was at certain times.
I thought we were boyfriend and girlfriend, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's dicey there because Lauren and I always had a close relationship. We were good friends, and you and I were off and on quite a lot. And honestly, I don't know at what points we're not going to be able to piece that together here unless we break out the text messages from back in 2004.
Get my old phone
Call
out.
Singular Wireless or something from our Nokia 3390s. Be like, can I get some text and try to piece it all together? But there was liberties taken by MTV, of course, and in times when they teed up to me as like, well, your friend Lauren, or maybe sometimes it'd be like, Dieter and you and Dieter are going to show up to Lauren's house and do a tour. And then Dieter wouldn't show up.
Funny how that happens.
So there were times where, they had their tricks. But yeah, there was obviously, of course, Lauren and I had a history as well. And so, there were times I feel like she got in the hurricane that was our relationship. The poor girl got caught up in that, unfortunately. We jump into the setting up of the black and white affair, which there's no way that this scene happened like actually before the event.
No.
This is the black and white affair. I'm willing to bet $100 that this is not something that somebody made up the name of from our group of friends or from that.
I feel like that entire scene of the senior girls setting up this party was a pickup scene, and they specifically went through every single person on that invite.
Yep.
We also didn't go and rent, $700 hotel rooms for just a night of fun.
To have parties, no.
That wasn't a normal for us.
No, we definitely couldn't afford that back then.
No.
That was on MTV's dime, having the event. They needed space where people that were coming there needed to know that they were probably going to be on camera, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everyone had to sign a waiver if you were going to come and be on camera. Yeah. So they couldn't just show up to any house party.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that night we did go to a different house party. I actually remember us having a lot of fun at Polster's house.
Oh, really? You remember that night?
Yeah, I do, because I have photos from that night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, we'll share some of the photos.
Yeah,
you still have them?
I'm sure I could find them. Yeah.
It's interesting. I have no idea. We drive away from the party. I'm like, I don't know where we're going.
We went to Polster's, I can tell you.
That's right. It is mentioned in the show.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, this is, a lot of what we're going to talk about is the formula of the show and how they set up these events. And, they could sit there and let the cameras run for 45 minutes. And then the writers would come in. They weren't called writers. They were producers. Some of them were actual writers that they were brought in to, like, hey, we're going to need you to feed the guys lines at some point to piece the story together. Right. And so they would come in and say, hey, we need you to say this and this. And this is just a classic example of that. And then also you have the beginning of the editing. They have, Lauren coughing after somebody says, should we invite Kristin? And it's like,
right.
It like,
the editing on this show was amazing, or all of the looks to each other.
It's classic MTV editing right there. And then I think before we go into, we have after that was the surf shop scene, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, you have a scene with you do so on that phone call, you're talking to Alex
H.
Alex H.
Yeah, and so that's
you weren't talking to her.
No, I wasn't talking to her. I was talking to myself, but they made it seem as though I was talking to Alex because they were trying to get the story of that night together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I went to go visit you at the surf shop. And
by the way,
I know, I love that you have a Laguna Surf and Sport
wearing a little Laguna
sweatshirt on. That's awesome. None of that was real. Like, these were all pickup scenes. Even going and seeing
I can tell by our dynamic. Yeah,
exactly.
You're saying coming to Surf and Sport because we
were sweeter there.
We were sweeter, but it was still like, we were sweet.
No, it was purposely a little uncomfortable because they wanted it to be. That was a pickup scene. I know that it was. And also, one thing I noticed about that scene was that, do you remember voiceovers or wild lines?
Yep.
So what they would have us do is, and sometimes it would be after filming a scene, they would have us go in the production van and we would literally just say lines, whatever lines they told us to say.
Mm-hmm.
So in that scene, when you ask if I'm going to go to Trae's house, I said, I'm not going if Lauren's going. I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
That was a wild line.
Mm-hmm. And also, that's why I had that weird reaction. I'm like, oh.
Right, exactly, because I never said it there. Basically, if you don't see us actually saying the line,
mm-hmm.
it's safe to assume it was not actually said there.
Yep. And I remember that was shot so far down the road that they let me, I don't know if you remember this, they let me hold the camera for your walk up to going into and you could see you have this little smirk on your face right before it cuts away. But I had the camera and I was holding it. And I just, like, throughout the production of this whole thing, I was obviously very interested in production and what it was taking to shoot this thing and these giant cameras that they had and all that. And so at the end of it, I was always pushing them, like, let me shoot something. Let me shoot some sort of drive away by somebody or some walk away. And it was getting near the end of our shoot and they needed to get that piece of us in Surf and Sport to connect some dots.
Yep.
Like, remember they say, like, hey, wear this. For me, they're like, wear that LRG shirt that's brown with the green stripes, because that's what I wore to Trae's house that they shot months earlier.
Yeah.
So I did, and there we are. And we're kind of having this conversation. And this is it's just funny. You could see first, the piece that I'm in, and you can just kind of see the awkwardness of trying to achieve something that they need for their story that they're feeding us. And you're kind of processing that and whatever we have going on the side, but needing to, acquiesce to them, which is
exactly.
an odd dynamic when you're not actors and you're 17 years old. So
right.
That was an interesting one. I did like your little imitating me as I pick up the phone, and I'm about to say Surf and Sport.
Oh yeah.
Surf and Sport.
See, that's what I mean. Like that was more of our dynamic. I felt
moments.
like there were little glimpses into how we really were, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Where there are other scenes later in the episode where you can tell things were not necessarily good between us.
Nope.
And that's what happens when you do mesh a few, months together.
Sure.
That's bound to happen.
So then we get into Trae's house, which we always laugh about because it says the best. Someone says the best party house in Laguna. I think Lauren, maybe she says it in a voiceover.
Yeah.
And then we get.
Was that true?
I mean,
he had parties, but
oh yeah,
yeah,
he still has parties.
Does he?
Yeah. Trae lives in London, and we'd love to have him on the show. Of course, we will at some point. But he comes back in town, and we get people together back at his house.
That's
and honestly, we're picking up right where we left off.
Mm.
And in one of these scenes, actually, where it's Lauren and it's Polster. And it's Dieter, and they're talking about going to a jacuzzi and the bubbles. I love this scene because it's unedited. It's actually real. It's a real conversation, and so you can feel that like pure innocence of like this is what's going on in our life today. Like we are here, we're having a beer, we're partying a little bit, and then we're gonna go to this jacuzzi and we're gonna fill it with bubbles.
I thought that was actually so funny.
And then Lauren's like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah.
Polster's like, why wouldn't you do that? It's just like
Very
that to me.
sweet.
It just captures the innocence of what's going on in your life at that time. And so that was, I think, a beautiful moment. Really, really funny. They introduced Polster as the party enthusiast, which we still give him crap to this day, which is really, really funny. Trae is barbecuing in a sweater and a button-up shirt. The fashion is coming out early for him. Very strong. He was always his own individual, which we love about him.
And a heart of gold, honestly. Like that's what I remember most about Trae. Just a really sweet,
always
good
welcoming.
guy.
That's why his house, like his his parents weren't. There was times I think they were out of town. Talking to him years after, they're like, a lot of people would come to us and be like, "So all the kids partied at your house in high school?" And they're like, "No, we did. We weren't always there for them."
I love
it. They're amazing people, but they also. Dieter is a little upset how they label him Stephen's wingman, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, I didn't
and
even
then
notice that.
This is where they do this weird setup of like, and I remember watching this for the first time being like, oh, this is what they're focusing on because they kind of steered it around our storylines, Lauren, yourself, and me.
Yeah.
And they shot so many people. But this is when we first learned watching this episode that this is what they were going to highlight, really.
That's
I mean,
a
you
good
get
point.
a little bit of an idea through what they're asking you to say and shoot, but they're doing that with so many people. You have no idea ultimately what they're going to do. And then they did this POV where it's like, oh, this is Stephen's buddy. And, it's like, where's Stephen? And then Stephen shows, I'm like, and then they try to piece together this, like when I arrive, like it was like when the party began.
Everyone
I'm
was like, oh my God,
"Yes, yes,
Stephen's
yes." I was like,
here.
oh,
the world
God.
just stops. Hey,
I'm
I mean, it's
shaking-
kind of nice to be
shaking
the
my
most
head here.
sought after, Could be worse.
Very, very uncomfortable with that.
Well, my question for you from that night was, did you guys really leave together?
Yeah, right? No, and it's like Dieter's saying, are you going to spend the night there talking
Right.
to Lauren? This is all pieced together. And I
Yeah.
remember that's not what happened.
That's what I thought, yeah.
We walk out together and you could see they're trying so hard to create the dynamic between Lauren and I in this episode, right? Or in this
The looks
from this
to each
party.
other.
And they wind up doing this when we get to the hotel as well. They're pulling all these different looks from different parts of the night, putting them together. And then I don't even know whose house, what were we talking about, but like this whole like she was coming back to my house. That's
Well, it was interesting
shenanigans.
because you guys leave that night and say that she's going to your house, but then later in the episode, when I say Taylor saw you leaving her house. So like
Again.
even that alone didn't add up.
I know. And then from there, the next scene, what do they have? It's me, driving up to. Now this obviously wasn't like it's supposed to be the next day, or
Right.
it kind of is, but
Seems like it is.
yeah,
though.
they're trying to paint it that way. But like I'm driving up to her house. It's like, oh, we're hanging out and we're doing this scene, which again was shot, months, if not weeks, or if not months after we actually shot that piece. So
right.
look, they're trying to paint the picture hard there. And look, I think this all comes from understanding. Look, it's not like they're just making this up out of thin air. They had heard stories that there was, what was kind of going on in our lives. And I think a big part of what MTV was trying to do was put us in positions where some of those storylines would thrive again, potentially.
Yeah, they
And
caught
then-
wind
yeah.
of something and wanted to keep it going because that was the best storyline they had, honestly.
Yep. and then they'll just leave it in the hands of the editors, which, got to hand it to them. They put it together. So
they did a phenomenal job. I will say, so the scene that they were cutting to with Alex and I while you guys were at Trae's, quite possibly the dumbest thing I've ever said. When talking about if you and I would have really cute babies, and I say, because you're all tan. Like, what the actual fuck? You can file that under the dumbest thing I've ever
He's
said.
all tan and stuff.
He's all tan. So I will say that was actually one of the first scenes I ever shot. And I was very nervous. I'm not defending this stupid comment, by the way, okay? But I was very nervous the first few times I shot. And actually my very first scene is in this episode, and it's with Talon, which we'll get to later. But I just remember being very nervous and just saying dumb shit all the time. So that was one of them.
At least you said something. I was over there just like mumbling stuff and not really talking. Like even Surf and Sport, when you come into that scene, even though we had done our whole season, this is like, I think, a microcosm of me on the show, which is like awkwardly trying not to make any sort of drama or say anything like trying too hard. Like I remember I made a promise to myself. I was just going to kind of just be casual and don't try to play to camera too much and kind of forget that it's there.
Right.
I think maybe I took that to heart too much.
Surf and Sport was tricky because it was so quiet. And there's, the thing is, when you're filming a show like this, there's actually a lot of people watching you. I mean, there's multiple cameras.
Oh, yeah.
There's audio, there's producers, there's all these people. So yeah, you want to think it's just you and I in Surf and Sport, but it's not. It's actually a little nerve-wracking. It's different at a party when there's a ton of people. The cameras aren't just right there in your eyesight. But at Surf and Sport, because you had to turn the music off, like everything had to be very quiet. So it was always a little like, just a little uncomfortable.
Yep. Oh yeah, and they use Trae's house to set up the party at the Surf and Sand. They have Morgan, Morgan's personality is great. It comes off the show, I think,
Morgan
very
so
well.
much.
She's very sweet. And she's talking about
funny.
Friday night at the Surf and Sand, we got a suite.
Yeah.
So obviously MTV's, at that point they're trying to tee up that night. So as we were kind of all gathered around that table, and everyone's of course wants to get out of there, it was like, all right, we need you to say this, right, and you can all go. And then again, they have they're piecing all this editing of Lauren and I leaving together, which of course did not naturally happen. And then we get to the scene with you and Talon.
Oh my God, are you right?
Well, hold on. I got it.
So this. Okay, go ahead.
This is how the scene opens. I will be playing the part of Kristin here.
No.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm just really stressed out on Stephen and Lauren. That's your first line.
Okay, literally. So this is the very first scene I ever shot. So this is from the pilot. I was so nervous, which again, I'm not defending my stupid behavior and everything I said, but I was very nervous. Also, I watched it so differently now than I remember back in the day. I just remember when I first saw it, I clearly was trashing Lauren, and I felt like I was so nervous that I was just trying to like get anything out. Like I didn't put any real thought or emotion behind anything I said. But then when I watched it this time, I noticed what Talon was saying. And Talon kept alluding to the fact that he and I were hooking up, and he's so sick of hooking up with this. And I was like, wait, I watched it this time going, was I hooking up with Talon during? Like, I was so confused as to what was going on. But I hate this scene. This is my least favorite scene I'm going to imagine in the entire series, just because I was really nervous. It was my first scene ever shooting, and I'm not proud of anything I said or did in that scene.
Yeah, it's a perfect microcosm as well of what MTV was doing, as piecing all the stories together, having Talon say stuff and
to try to get information out of me. And I literally said, I just hate Lauren. I just like want her out of my life, which I did feel at the time.
And you guys probably did that walk up or like settle in a couple times. I can tell the way you say, like, I don't know, I'm just really stressed out about Stephen and Lauren. I mean, that's a line that's fed to you, right? I mean, you don't go and hang out with Talon and be like, so,
by the way,
I'm just really stressed out about Stephen and Lauren. No.
Here's the thing. I don't feel as though I was going around talking about you and Lauren that often, but because that was the storyline for the show, of course, that's what they want. If they just filmed Talon and I going to lunch, none of that would have made the show.
Sure.
So they do have to carry their storylines through and have us talk about specific things. That was honestly like my biggest issue with the whole thing. So yes, did something happen with you, Lauren, and I? Absolutely. But it wasn't at the forefront of my mind when MTV came. But what they do is they latch onto these little things and they turn these little things into something so much bigger because now we're talking about it all the time. You know, they're putting us in these situations to piss us off. So it becomes something when maybe it really wasn't that big to begin with.
Of course. Yep. That's the show.
And that's reality to me.
And then another awkward conversation we have is which a conversation that we never had between Polster, Dieter, and myself.
Oh, I want to jump into this conversation.
And we're at some thrift shop or something shopping, which we never did.
You didn't go thrift shopping?
A place that they had cleared where they were allowed to shoot.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling incredibly awkward in this scene when we were shooting it because
this is also from the pilot.
We were just kind of all hanging out, and the producers kept coming back to like, all right, we want you guys to talk about, Stephen's relationship with Kristin, and like, when they broke up, it was like, what was his relationship with Lauren? What was happening there? They've been friends for so long, but they would always say that they've been friends for so long,
Right.
like what's going on there? Do you guys want them to be something? And so
are you saying you're going to clear up your comment about me not being girlfriend material? Is that what you're getting to right now?
did I say that?
Oh, yeah. Let's go rewatch it. Well, something to that effect. It was more like,
Okay.
Kristin's a lot of fun.
She's a lot of fun.
Like she's great to hook up with and
Great.
all this.
Okay.
Lauren would be a better girlfriend.
Okay, that's what I said.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. No, I can tell you.
Well, I think at this point in our relationship, we probably had broken up 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah. And that's the
like,
point, though. Like, that was from the pilot when things were not good between us. But yeah, you still said it.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's all good.
I think, Polster says, they got that line where they had Polster say, like, something about the girls fighting over you.
Yeah.
And I remember I say back to him, the girls fighting over me, right? You hear me say it back. And he was like, then someone else chimes in or something. And then Polster's just like, such drama. And I'm like, I know, right? And then we're out of there.
Right.
Then we're going into
Then we're on a date.
a dinner date with you and I, where we go out for a little pasta in downtown Laguna, which this scene was hard to watch.
Yeah.
What is
because
going
you were
on?
lying. So
Was I though?
it's okay. I will say I do feel like you were. Well, I know you were lying here because
I think I was trying to clear something up about like, I think they used some sort of a conversation where like, Stephen, you were at Lauren's house at some point, right? And I was there and we were talking about different times. And I think we did get into it a little bit, but I was trying to clear up something because you were probably, I think, taking it to like, oh, you were up like spending the night sleeping with Lauren or something like that. And I was like, oh, actually, I was there probably with other people at an earlier time in the day. I don't even know.
I think we
Something
were
like
talking
that.
about 2 different situations and
Of
they
course.
made it seem like it was the same thing. And again, I think this may have been from the pilot, but what happened was they were trying to make it seem as though we were talking about that night when you and Lauren left Trae's house. So in this same episode, it was a completely separate time where my friend Taylor at the time did see you leaving Lauren's, and that was a very real thing. Like that emotion for me was very real. And you were lying to me about it, and you were a very bad liar.
I don't even remember exactly what happened.
But it was
as
to me, it was funny because you were like, what? At Lauren's? No, I wasn't. No,
I know,
I'm all,
clearly-
she saw you at 9:30, and
clearly
then
I'm just-
later you're like, no, it was like 7:30. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was 2 hours off.
I think I was hoping I was going to choke on that bread and just keel at that moment. You were coming on strong on me there with that. And I wish I knew exactly what was going on there, but I guess conveniently can't remember.
Yeah, sticking by your story.
I don't even know.
But that's the thing. Obviously, at the time watching this episode, I was very upset about stuff like that.
Sure.
Now I can watch it and I can laugh at it.
I remember
You know?
like you and Talon hanging out and like you guys talking about hooking up, right? And I remember watching
Right.
that being like, and like
I'm sure.
it was
I
very
blacked
painful.
all of that out of my memory. When he was
Yeah.
talking about us hooking up, I was like, what? I don't remember any of that. I know it happened.
I know.
it happened.
I
But
know.
yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting scene.
Okay, I do want
by
to
the
say
way,
this too, really quickly.
ahead.
So watching it now, it's so different when you're in the middle of it. You're very emotional. I will say the fact that Lauren and I really went after each other is so messed up when I love you, but the person we should have been going after was you.
Mhm.
And this is so classic, right? If someone gets cheated on, you go after the other woman. But it's like, why are we not blaming the guy, or the girl, whatever the situation is? But in a lot of ways, I feel bad, and I really just should have been taking it out
Well,
on
I
you,
think
I
that-
guess. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's stop you right there. I understand the sentiment. Absolutely. If in a real life, in this situation where a guy was just like playing both these girls and not giving a shit about their feelings or what was happening between them, like, yeah, that's really fucked up. And
I'm not saying
should,
you did that, yeah.
But I think what's getting lost here is, of course, the timetable of when everything was happening, when we were on or off,
Yeah.
and when Lauren and I were maybe hanging out more because you and I were off, stuff like that. There was, that happened, and it was like we would go in these crazy waves. And so I think it was, that emotion is obviously very real. But MTV's painting it in the way of like, this is like straight up what's going down. In this whole, again, the black and white affair, like having me leave with Lauren and then with you as well. Like, that is one of the biggest things for me that I was very uncomfortable with, especially because like at this point I was a heartbroken kid going into the middle of like our senior year, right? Because we had this big relationship and it was falling apart. Yeah. And I was like incredibly heartbroken, right? And then we were trying to figure it out, and then Lauren got swept up in all of this. And that's just not who I am, right?
I agree with you. No, so you were always very sweet. I don't think you were just sitting here trying to play both of us.
And that was difficult. Look, I'm not going to say that I didn't make mistakes, and obviously was a 17, 18-year-old kid who had a lot to learn as far as treating people's emotions and leading people on at certain times, stuff like that. Of course, I made some mistakes as well. I don't want to use MTV as a full scapegoat, but that is watching that first episode. The biggest reason I had to throw that tape away, put it aside, was like, why are they're making me out to be this type of person? And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. That's not me. It's almost like the frat guy that's like, hey bro, hooked up with like, 3 chicks tonight. It's like, I don't know. It's just not, that was never my style. I don't know.
Well, and it's interesting because when you're so young, I don't think most 17, 18-year-olds really know who they are. And I remember saying, okay, I don't really know who I am. I don't think I'm this girl on the show, but I know that I don't want to be this girl on the show. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, I felt like it made me look inward and really figure out who the heck I was, to be honest. And I do feel like the show ultimately made me grow up and probably get my shit together a little bit and not be such a little brat, because I do think that there was a part of me that was like that.
Do you feel like it gave you thicker skin?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
That's a feeling that I had. I think as traumatizing as I think it is to go through that experience of all of a sudden seeing what this show is, right? Watching the episode for the first time and then be like, I can't watch this again, and having to call each other and apologize or clarify things. And then also understand that this is being broadcast around the country at the time. So we thought, and then of course, eventually around the world. And, people having their opinions about it, and whether people stopping in the street and talking about it, again, not something you see when you sign up for it. Not at all. Not an expectation. There was like, we kind of had our plans of like, oh, we want to network and meet some connections and do some things with our lives. But to have it go off on the path that it did and kind of take off and become this thing, during that time for a moment, it puts you in a, I don't know. I was crawling out of my skin. It really is skin crawling stuff. And, I had anxiety with it, but I kind of shelved it and was like, look, you know what? Like, at the end of the day, it's just a silly TV show, right? And I think people should recognize that. And for me to let this, I think affect my life or it's interesting because it sets you down a path, but you wanted to kind of go down a certain path, right? We wanted to work in entertainment. We had our ambitions in places, right? But it's not like we were going out like wanting to be famous, wanting like see, which is the difference I think between what you're seeing in reality TV now, between what I think I can say now is looking back on these innocent, pure human beings, so young, having no idea what they're getting themselves into, and I think that is a big part of what maybe gives Laguna Beach its lure is these kids really did not understand what they were doing.
I agree.
And the right professionals came in to create a story around lives that they had spoken to them. Mm-hmm. And this is what's now being broadcast on your TV. And it's leaving this big, giant question mark up for an audience going like, wait, what? I haven't seen anything like this before. I'm used to seeing the Osbournes or Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson, the Newlyweds. And who are these people? And is this real? So
no, that's a really good point. It is very different than reality TV now. People have an agenda going on a show and they want to be famous. That's the only reason they're doing it, where it was never about that. We had no idea we were going to become quote unquote
It was
famous.
An opportunity.
Yeah, it was something fun to do in high school.
We got paid our $2,000. Do you remember what you did, by the way, which I thought was a lot of money at the time? I mean, it was.
Well, yeah.
It was like, and this is another thing we talk about in the show. They made it seem like we were these incredibly spoiled kids that like got whatever we wanted. Which
not me.
Not me either.
Broken down a Zuzu Trooper. It's a later episode. I didn't have a credit card like everybody else.
I was driving my my Toyota Tacoma, and then also sometimes my dad's car. Which there's a a shift in some. I think they wanted to drive my dad's car as often as possible because it was a little bit nicer than the Toyota Tacoma. So they're like, "Can we use the Explorer?"
Truck, though, like that was your thing.
You know what? When that car.
Lots of memories.
A couple of years after that car, after the show ended, and I eventually sold the car to a guy who had a liquor store in Santa Ana. Said he was going to transport liquor in it. I was like, well, picking up right where it left off.
Right, yeah.
And I sold it and sat in the car and cried, which was an interesting experience. I did not
end of an era.
expect that.
A lot of memories in that car.
I've had some other cars since, didn't cry, but that one. For some reason.
That's sweet. Because we used to just park it and hang out in the car.
We ran away in it.
We
Down
were
the street.
about to run away.
Take our little road trip.
Oh, man.
But anyway, so
then we get to the black and white.
Let's get to the black and white affair.
The things that people thought were fake were actually real. And the things that people didn't necessarily question were fake. So my white dress, me being the only person to wear a white dress to this freaking black and white affair, was real. That was my white dress. That was not planned, where everyone was like, oh, the producers must have told Kristin to wear the white dress. No, that was real.
Quote from you as we were walking up to the black and white affair, you were saying, I only want to stay for like 4 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry, Stephen. I don't want to hang out with these people right now.
Okay. So, yeah.
You are a pistol.
Thank you.
You are a pistol. Very funny.
So in a nutshell, there was a few things going on here. One was Polestar was actually having a party this night. And that's where I wanted to go.
You had places to be.
I had places to
let's go.
We
MTV.
actually did end up going and had a really fun night, I will say. But it goes back to this thing. I would never in a million years hang out with this group of people in a hotel room, nonetheless. And so, yes, I was very uncomfortable. I didn't want to be there. At one point, I like storm out on the deck and I'm like, I'm going out there and I'm getting this shit over with. But I was frustrated at the producers because they said, well, you can't leave until you all go out on the deck. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I just want to get out of here. So that wasn't at you. That wasn't at Lauren. That was purely at the situation.
Yep.
And, you know, yes, was I an immature little brat? 100%. But I never would have been in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the party, of course, they teed up for Lauren to be this big party and that, you know, we're coming and it should be a great time having everyone there. But it's like if Lauren was really going to have like a party that she wanted to have a great time at, of course you would not be invited.
I wouldn't be there.
Like,
I would never be invited.
Completely different friend groups.
Yeah.
But this was an MTV party. And this is something that, you know, they obviously paid for the hotel room. That is something that we would never do without them there and that group of people being there. But there's some good pieces there. There's some funny, as far as some quotes, some lines where it's silly what we're talking about going skinny dipping, which was weird. And then so you really want to leave.
I clearly did not want to be there. I think I said it 500 times.
And eventually you stomp out of there and, or we all do. And then, we're driving off.
We went to Polster's.
We went to Polster's house.
I'm going to find this photo that I have. I remember like really having a fun night.
Are you in the white dress still?
Hell yeah.
Interesting.
By the way, that white dress, classic. I'd wear that today.
All right. So yeah, again, a lot of classic MTV with the editing and the looks. The
show was known for the looks.
Yeah. Of those pieces that they took and people really bought into it.
It's amazing, honestly, when you think about it. Now I'd be like, this is all bullshit.
I'm sure a lot of you, that watched this this show back in the day, and if you're revisiting it, which we encourage you to do as we follow along as we revisit it for the first time. I think you'll, especially after watching more reality TV, I'm sure over all these years, like shenanigans, you'll be able to, point it out right away.
Yes.
But that is, that is the first episode of Laguna Beach, and man, did they set the table for some things to come.
They sure did. I will say, from an entertainment perspective, I thought it was good. I mean, they did what they wanted to do.
I agree. I think that they set the table and captured an audience, and you got to give them credit for that. They did everything they could to put these pieces together and these lives that don't normally and naturally hang out in the ways that they need to for the show. They did it and pieced that together with a couple of beautiful helicopter shots of the coastline and
there is a hit.
Laguna Beach, the real Orange County. So
something we're going to do every episode is we're going to rate ourselves. This was Stephen's idea and I love it. Personally and also as far as entertainment purposes go. So do you want to go first, Stephen?
Sure. Personal rating, F. And,
Really?
Oh yeah.
Everyone loved you. I wouldn't give you an F.
I mean,
Yes, did they portray you as a player? Sure. But I mean, you still were sweet. And I don't think you were like some asshole. Like you were a good guy still.
I mean,
I think you're being a little harsh.
I mean, it was kind of skin crawling stuff to watch that. Of course. And I mean, just like I was so awkward and insecure at that, obviously, in that point in my life. It was, I'm trying to play it cool, just trying not to trip over myself. And as whether I'm awkwardly chewing bread as you're calling me out for lying openly, just like hoping that I choke on the thing, to mumbling through some other pieces. I don't even know, but that is, overall for me, watching that episode and being like, whoa, what are they teeing up here? It was an F.
Okay, what about entertainment-wise?
As far as entertainment-wise, I think it was B+ for me because obviously they set the table for a really good show. I have to, because it needed to be edited together so much to create these stories, and they did a good job of that. I think now, just kind of like with my mindset and working in TV and film, like you see the cutting and all the editing put together, like it can be a little rough around the edges, but it just had to be because it's all that they had. And then I can't just give them an A because, like, I don't know, that
better be your best performance ever.
I mean, man, these like they set up this story, especially from my perspective, that I was incredibly uncomfortable with, but I can't. It's not MTV's fault, right? It's like at the end of the day,
we don't
like,
blame them at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a job to do, and they did it.
We signed up for it, so we had it coming in a way, right?
Absolutely, we deserved every second. Okay, I personally am gonna go a D. I don't think it was my best effort, but I think
we are not passing.
Later episodes where maybe it was a little bit worse, which we'll get to. And then entertainment wise, I mean, I'd probably go a B because they put me in that box. I delivered, but I do think I have better performances coming up, I will say.
Mm-hmm. But you think for an audience though?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get the gist of who they are trying to make me out to be. I was a sassy little bratty bitch, so I'm gonna go B.
Love it. And then what about a favorite quote from the episode?
I mean, I have to go with my dumb comment about our babies being really cute because you're tan. It's the dumbest thing. I hope it's the dumbest thing I've ever said. So there you go. What's your quote?
Don't say that. We still have about...
That's true. We have a lot more to go.
27 more episodes.
I don't say something worse than that. Shit.
My quote, got to give it to Lauren here.
I think I know exactly what you're going to say.
She says, I swear, if Kristin says she's leaving one more time, I'm going to physically pick her up and remove her from the hotel.
All right, that was a good one.
You were a hurricane, so it was funny. They did have a lot of pieces of you saying, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Literally. That was a good one. Okay.
And then what about a do-over?
If you could redo anything from the whole episode? I mean, I would love to redo the black and white affair, I would say, because
Would you wear black?
No, I wouldn't, actually. I would stick with my white. I just would. So I learned as the episodes went on, obviously, well, I guess I didn't learn until I saw the first episode, that anything you say, they can use, right? So I think I'm being smart, being like, okay, I'm just going to go on the deck and get this over with, because I'm essentially talking to the producers.
Yep.
But they're going to take that and make it look like I'm talking about being mad about being here with Lauren and everybody. So learn that real quick. Season 2 probably got my shit together a little bit more. What about yours?
My do-over would be chew with my mouth closed.
Yeah. Spit gum out. That was a big one for me.
Were you chewing? I was chewing gum.
Constantly chomping on gum. Yeah. Eventually, they did tell us to spit it out, and now I really see why.
You know what? They actually got me a speech coach.
They did?
Yep. I don't know at what point it was.
I think I needed it more than you.
Yeah, but I was like
I had marbles in my mouth.
Me too. I mean, my mom would always say that. She's like, you speak when you have marbles in your mouth.
I didn't notice that.
Sometimes it still comes out, but it's I was like under my breath, insecure, kind of like talking into my shoulder almost, or yours. Just kind of like, trying to play it casual. And so MTV hired a speech coach for me, and I had to drive to this woman's house. She had a ton of cats. And we sat there and we would do all sorts of fun little exercises with my tongue.
What kind of exercises? What would she have you do?
You do this right now?
My mother.
It was more of like
Sally
humming.
Sees
It was there were
I can't even.
They were humming. I was humming things. It was like exercising your tongue, moving it around, really enunciating stuff. So you had to say things like, I swear if Kristin says she's leaving one more time, I'm going to physically pick her up and remove her from the hotel.
That's funny because I probably could have used that too, but that wouldn't have gone with the character they wanted me to play. So it's funny they didn't get me a speech coach.
Oh man.
Well, this was fun.
It was fun. And it's fun that we get to talk about it, obviously all this many years later.
Yeah.
These years later, is this many years? Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm sorry. I need that speech coach.
But this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have so much more to dig into. It's going to be a lot of fun to do this. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think a positive experience. It's cathartic in a way because it was kind of sitting away for a long time. And I had a feeling that it would be better to watch now and I would be okay with it. And I am. It's
we can
funny.
Laugh at it now. Yeah, it is. It is funny. It is
and it's good to get your perspective on certain pieces and because we talk about it in little bits here and there, but we're never really together and talking about it. And even when you and I have caught up, we're not sitting there rehashing stuff from Laguna Beach. Or, we're talking about what's going on in our lives now. So this a little portrait back into our lives that was Laguna Beach, the real Orange County. It's gonna be a fun experience.
It is. I'm excited, and I will say just a final note. It's interesting to hear that you were really upset about how you were portrayed because at the time, my world revolved around me and I was really upset about how I was portrayed. So it never even occurred to me that anybody else would be upset about it either. So it's just interesting as we get older, I have way more empathy and compassion for other people. My world doesn't just revolve around me anymore. And so I don't know. It's just interesting to sit here and I had no idea that you were that upset about it. I just didn't.
Well, there's obviously going to be a lot more to unpack as we move forward. And next week, we've got episode 2 of the first season of Laguna Beach, which is titled The Bonfire.
Can't wait for that one.
Which we did.
We did quite a few bonfires.
We actually did do bonfires.
Yeah, that was very real.
That was something. I mean, because we had nothing else to do. We went to the beach.
We would go to the beach.
Yep. At the nighttime. So, I have no idea what happens in that episode. I could tell you that there's probably Trae, Dieter, Lauren, myself, you, Talon in it, Morgan, Christina. We're all there, right?
I would say.
Hello?
I would imagine.
But what happens? I have no idea.
Stay tuned.
So I'm going to be finding this out with you guys. We look forward to bringing it to you. So
absolutely.
Talk to you next week.